The great hall of the Blackwood Pack fell silent, a hush so profound it felt like the moon itself had stolen their breath. A single, shimmering thread of silver light descended from the high, arched window, cutting through the haze of ceremonial incense to land on the worn, gray fabric of my maid's uniform. It illuminated every frayed edge, every stain I couldn't scrub out, and held me there, pinned like an insect for all to see. Whispers erupted like wildfire, mocking and cruel, the same ones that had followed me for years. But then, his voice, the one that commanded armies and made wolves bow, cut through the noise. Her? Alpha Kalen's word was not a question, but a raw, guttural sound of disbelief, of pure rejection. The mate bond, a phantom touch I'd never known I was missing, flared to life between us at his voice, a searing, exquisite agony. In the same instant, his eyes, cold as a winter storm, met mine, and I felt the bond fracture before it had even fully formed. The moon goddess had chosen me, a nameless, worthless maid, for the true Alpha, and in front of the entire pack, he had just denied it. Wait, before the next revelation unfolds, if this mystery has already captivated you, let us know where you're following this story from. To ensure you don't miss unexpected claims, broken bonds, or awakenings under the moon, subscribe and stay close. Now, back to the scene. My world narrowed to the space between us. Alpha Kalen stood on the dais, a figure carved from power and privilege, his black ceremonial tunic emphasizing the breadth of his shoulders. Beside him, Seraphina, his intended, looked from him to me, her beautiful face contorting into a mask of pure venom. Her family was old, powerful. Their alliance with Kalen meant to unify the northern territories. I was nothing, an orphan taken in by the pack 10 years ago, a shadow who polished the silver and scrubbed the floors, visible only when someone needed to cast blame or spit a cruel word. My world narrowed to the space between us. Alpha Kalen stood on the dais, a figure carved from power and privilege, his black ceremonial tunic emphasizing the breadth of his shoulders. Beside him, Seraphina, his intended, looked from him to me, her beautiful face contorting into a mask of pure venom. Her family was old, powerful. Their alliance with Kalen meant to unify the northern territories. I was nothing, an orphan taken in by the pack 10 years ago, a shadow who polished the silver and scrubbed the floors, visible only when someone needed to cast blame or spit a cruel word. The silver light of the goddess did not waver. It held me fast, exposing me. I could feel the weight of hundreds of pairs of eyes, feel their scorn, their pity, their outright disgust. The girls who shoved me in the hallways, who called me scullery rat, were laughing openly now. This had to be a joke, a cruel cosmic punishment for a crime I didn't know I'd committed. Kalen took a step forward, his jaw so tight I could see the muscles flexing from across the hall. The bond, that broken, bleeding thing inside my chest, pulsed with his confusion, his anger. It was an invasion, this sudden connection to his soul, and it felt like I was drowning in him. He was the Alpha. His word was law. He could end this and me with a single command. "The ceremony is compromised," he declared, his voice ringing with authority that sent a tremor through the very stone floors. He did not look at me again. He couldn't. The bond would force it, but he was fighting, his formidable will wrestling with the goddess's magic. "The elders will convene. Everyone else leave." The order was absolute, but for a moment no one moved. They were transfixed by the impossible sight of me. Ilara, the girl who cleaned up their messes, bathed in the sacred moonlight of the choosing. Then Serafina moved. She glided to Kalen's side, placing a proprietary hand on his arm, her red lacquered nails a stark contrast to his dark tunic. "Kalen, darling, it's clearly a mistake, some sort of magical misfire. Get rid of it." Her dismissal, the way she referred to me as an object, was nothing new. But hearing it now, with this agonizing connection to the man beside her throbbing in my soul, it was like a physical blow. I flinched, and I felt Kalen flinch with me. His eyes shot to mine against his will, a flash of pure shock on his face as he felt the echo of my pain. For a split second, there was not an alpha and a maid, just a man and a woman, connected by a force neither understood. Then the mask was back. He gently removed Serafina's hand. "Elders, my study, now." He turned and strode from the dais without a backward glance, the crowd parting before him like the sea. The moment he was gone, the silver light vanished, plunging me back into the shadows where I belonged. The noise of the dispersing pack was a dull roar in my ears. I was left alone in the center of the vast hall, the scent of incense and shattered hope thick in the air. I should have run. I should have fled the pack house, the territory, and never looked back. But where would I go? The Blackwood pack was the only home I'd ever known, however cruel. My feet, bound by a decade of servitude, remained rooted to the spot. A sharp tug on my hair snapped me back to reality. "You filthy little witch," Serafina hissed, her face inches from mine. Her two closest friends, Lyra and Cassia, flanked her, their expressions predatory. "What did you do? What spell did you cast?" I did nothing," I stammered, my scalp burning. "Liar," Cassia spat, shoving me backward. I stumbled, my worn leather shoes slipping on the polished marble. "You think you can steal an alpha? A scullery maid? The goddess would never choose the likes of you." "She must have tainted the ceremonial wine," Lyra suggested, her eyes gleaming with malice. "Or stolen an artifact from the elders' chambers." Serafina's grip tightened, forcing tears to my eyes. "Whatever you did, you will undo it. Kalen is mine, the pack is mine. You are a stain, and I will scrub you out. Do you understand me?" I couldn't speak. I could only nod, my body trembling uncontrollably. She shoved me away in disgust, and I fell to the floor, my hands scraping against the cold stone. They laughed, the sound sharp and brittle in the cavernous hall, before turning and sweeping away, their fine silks rustling. I lay there for a long time, the silence pressing in on me. The agony in my chest had subsided to a dull, persistent ache. It was a phantom limb, a connection to a man who would never have me, a man who looked at me with repulsion. The moon goddess had not given me a gift, she had handed me a death sentence. Eventually, the need to escape, to hide, overrode my paralysis. I scrambled to my feet and fled, not toward the grand exits, but toward the servants' corridors, the maze of back hallways that was my true domain. I ran until my lungs burned, until I reached the small, windowless room in the cellar that I shared with two other kitchen hands. It was empty. I collapsed onto my thin straw mattress, curled into a tight ball, and finally let the sobs come. They were silent, shuddering things, born of a terror so profound I had no voice for them. Hours bled into one another. I didn't know if it was day or night. I only knew the constant, hollow ache of the bond. It was a hollow echo in my soul, a reminder of what I had been shown and what I could never have. I felt flickers of his emotions, annoyance, frustration, a deep, wearying anger. He was in the meeting with the elders, arguing about me. A key turned in the lock of my room door. I shot up, my heart hammering against my ribs. The door creaked open, revealing not Seraphina or her friends, but Beta Marcus, Kalen's second in command. His face, usually kind, was grim. "Ilara," he said, his voice low. "The Alpha wants to see you." My blood ran cold. This was it, the official rejection. He would perform the rite, sever the bond completely, and then I would be cast out. A wolf without a pack, a maid without a home, a mate without a soul. It was better than this, I told myself. A lie that tasted like ash in my mouth. Numbly, I followed Marcus through the winding corridors, up flights of stairs I usually only climbed with a bucket and rags. He led me to the Alpha's private wing, a place so forbidden to me that I had never even dared to look down its hallway. The carpets were thick and plush, silencing my footsteps. Portraits of former Alphas stared down at me, their eyes seeming to judge and condemn. Marcus stopped before a set of heavy oak doors. He knocked once, then opened one for me. "He's waiting." I stepped inside. The room was vast, dominated by a huge stone fireplace and a desk carved from a single ancient tree. Books lined the walls, and the air smelled of old paper, wood smoke, and something else, something wild and masculine that was purely Kalen. It called to the bond, making the ache in my chest sharpen with a longing so intense it stole my breath. He was standing by the window, staring out at the moonlit grounds. He didn't turn when I entered. "Alpha Kalen," I whispered, my voice barely audible. He remained silent for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice was rough, strained. "The elders have confirmed it. There was no magic from an outside source, no interference." He turned slowly, his face a storm of conflicting emotions. "The goddess chose you." He said the words like a curse. I just stared at him, my hands twisting in the fabric of my dress. What was I supposed to say? "Thank you? I'm sorry?" He took a step closer, and I instinctively shrank back. A flicker of something, was it hurt, crossed his face before being replaced by cold resolve. "This changes nothing. The alliance with Seraphina's pack is vital. We are on the brink of a rogue war, and her father's warriors will tip the scales. My duty is to this pack, to its safety and its future." "I understand," I breathed, the words tearing at my throat. "Do you?" He closed the distance between us in 2 long strides. He was so close now I could feel the heat radiating from his body. The bond screamed, a desperate, joyous thing, even as my mind reeled in terror. He lifted a hand, and I flinched violently. He froze, his fingers hovering in the air between us. The anger in his eyes was warring with a deep, painful confusion that I could feel as if it were my own. "I have never laid a hand on a woman in my life," he said, his voice a low growl. "And I will not start with you." He couldn't even say the word, "mate." "But you need to understand the position you have put me in." "I didn't ask for this." The words burst out of me, louder than I intended. His eyes widened in surprise. The maid had never raised her voice. The maid had never spoken to him at all, except to whisper, "Excuse me, Alpha," when she scurried past. "I know," he said, and for the first time, a sliver of weariness broke through his anger. "I know you didn't, but it has happened, and now we must deal with it." He paced the length of the room, his powerful form radiating a caged energy. A rejection is not simple. It's a violent severing. It can kill the weaker wolf or drive them mad. He stopped and looked at me, his gaze analytical, cold. He was assessing me, my strength, my chances of survival. And it would be an insult to the goddess, an act of defiance that could bring a curse upon the pack for generations. I wrapped my arms around myself, a pathetic attempt to hold myself together. He wasn't worried about me. He was just a problem to be managed. So, he continued, turning back to the window, there will be no rejection. A tiny, treacherous flicker of hope ignited in my chest. I stamped it out immediately. It was too dangerous. And there will be no mating. He turned back, his expression resolute. You will be moved to a private room in this wing. You will be given new clothes, better food. You will be protected. In return, you will remain silent. You will not speak of the bond to anyone. You will make no claims. In public, I will continue my courtship of Serafina. The pack will believe the ceremony was a fluke, a mystery that the elders are looking into. In time, they will forget. We will exist as we always have, two strangers living under the same roof. The bond will be our secret and our burden. It was a life sentence, a gilded cage where I would be forced to watch the man the universe had declared mine give his heart and his life to another woman, all while feeling the echo of it in my own soul. It was a torment more exquisite than any Serafina could have devised. "Do you agree to these terms?" he asked. It was not a question. It was an alpha's command disguised as one. What choice did I have? Defy him and face a forced rejection that would likely kill me, or accept this hollow existence? "Yes, Alpha," I whispered, the words tasting like poison. Good. He looked relieved. The problem was managed. He gestured to a door I hadn't noticed before. "That will be your room. Stay there. Someone will bring you what you need." He turned his back on me again, a clear dismissal. The conversation was over. My new life had begun. I walked on wooden legs to the door he had indicated and stepped through, closing it softly behind me. The room was beautiful, with a soft bed, a small fireplace, and a window that looked out onto the forest. It was more luxury than I had ever known, and it was a prison. I sank onto the bed, the mattress unbelievably soft beneath me, and stared at the wall that now separated me from my mate. I could feel him through the stone, through the bond. I felt his relief war with a strange, nagging dissatisfaction. He had solved the political problem, but his wolf, the beast within him, was howling in protest. He had caged its mate, and it was not happy. The ache in my chest flared, and a single, bitter tear traced a path down my cheek. The goddess had chosen me, but the Alpha had imprisoned me, and I had a terrible feeling that the bars of this cage were not nearly strong enough to hold back the storm that was coming. The next few weeks were a study in quiet misery. True to Kalen's word, I was a ghost in the Alpha's wing. A servant brought me meals on a tray, leaving it outside my door and knocking before scurrying away. New clothes appeared in the wardrobe, simple but clean and well-made dresses in soft wools and cottons, a world away from my threadbare uniform. I had books to read, a fire to keep me warm, and a window with a view of the ever-changing forest. It was a comfortable prison, but a prison nonetheless. The worst part was the bond. It was a constant, low thrum beneath my skin, a current of emotion that was not my own. I felt Kalen's frustration during council meetings, his exhilaration during the dawn patrol runs, his carefully guarded loneliness late at night when the pack house was asleep. And I felt his interactions with Serafina. I would be sitting, reading a book, when a wave of cloying sweetness, of forced affection would wash over me. It was him, having dinner with her, playing the part of the devoted suitor. The bond would curdle in response, a bitter mix of my jealousy and his wolf's deep-seated resentment. He was touching another female, courting another, and the primal part of him, the part the goddess had tied to me, raged against it. I would often have to press my hands to my chest to contain the sudden, violent emotion, a storm that belonged to him but crashed on the shores of my soul. He never came to my room. He never spoke to me. If we passed in the corridor, a rare occurrence, as I did my best to remain hidden, he would look straight through me, his jaw tight. But I felt his awareness of me. It was a physical pull, like two magnets straining against a barrier. His control was absolute, but the effort it took was immense. My old life was gone. The maids I had once worked with now averted their eyes when they saw me. They didn't know the truth, only that I had been plucked from the cellars and installed in the Alpha's wing after the bizarre ceremony. Rumors flew. I was a witch who had ensnared the Alpha. I was a long-lost relative being kept hidden. I was being punished for some terrible crime. The mockery had been replaced by a fearful suspicion that was somehow worse. One evening, unable to bear the confines of my room any longer, I slipped out onto the small stone balcony attached to my chambers. The air was cool and crisp, smelling of pine and damp earth. The full moon, the same moon that had sealed my fate, hung like a silver coin in the inky sky. I leaned on the railing, closing my eyes and just breathing. Suddenly, a wave of pure, unadulterated rage slammed into me, so powerful it made me gasp. It was Kaelin. It was raw, untamed, and terrifying. I gripped the railing, my knuckles white, as another wave hit me, followed by a surge of protectiveness so fierce it felt like a physical shield. He was fighting. Without thinking, I slipped back inside, my heart pounding. I had to see. I had to know. I crept from my room and down the silent corridor, following the pull of the bond, the intensity of his emotions. It led me not toward the main part of the house, but down a back staircase to the training grounds. I hid in the shadows of the armory, peering out onto the packed earth arena. Kaelin was there, stripped to the waist, his magnificent form gleaming with sweat under the moonlight. He was sparring with 3 of his best warriors, including Beta Marcus. But this wasn't training. This was a release. He moved with a brutal, desperate grace, his movements faster, harder than necessary. He was trying to exhaust himself, to beat back the instincts that were clawing their way to the surface. Marcus feinted left and aimed a blow at Kaelin's ribs. Kaelin moved like lightning, catching his arm and using his momentum to throw him to the ground. The other 2 warriors came at him from either side. He ducked under a swinging fist, spun, and swept the legs out from under one of them, all while deflecting a kick from the other. It was a deadly dance, and he was in complete control. But the rage pouring off him through the bond told a different story. His wolf was fighting for dominance, clawing against the cage of his duty. As I watched, mesmerized and terrified, a figure emerged from the main house, Seraphina. She was dressed in a slinky silk robe, her hair artfully tousled. She saw shade to the edge of the arena, a smug smile on her face. "Kaelin, darling," she purred, her voice carrying in the still night air. "Aren't you finished with your little game? You promised you'd come see me?" Kaelin dispatched the last warrior and turned to face her, breathing heavily. He didn't answer. "Don't be like that," she pouted, walking toward him. She ran a hand over his chest, her nails tracing patterns on his heated skin. "You've been so distant lately. Let me help you relax." From my hiding place, I felt a snarl build in Kalen's chest. It was his wolf, enraged by her touch. It wanted my touch. The thought was so shocking, so unexpected, that I stumbled back, knocking over a stack of training shields. The clatter was deafening in the silence. Every head in the arena snapped in my direction. Kalen's eyes locked onto mine. The rage I'd been feeling from him vanished, replaced by a jolt of pure, undiluted shock, followed by a possessive heat that burned all the way through me. It was the first time he had truly looked at me since that night, and the force of it was staggering. Serafina followed his gaze. When she saw me cowering in the shadows, her face twisted into a mask of fury. What are you doing here, you little spy?" I was just getting some air," I stammered, trapped in the intensity of Kalen's stare. "Spying on my mate, you mean?" she screeched, stalking toward me. Kalen moved so fast he was a blur. He was between us in a heartbeat, his back to me, one arm extended to block Serafina's path. "That's enough, Serafina." The growl in his voice was not human. It was pure alpha, pure wolf. It vibrated through the bond, a clear, unmistakable command. Mine. Protect. Serafina recoiled as if struck. Even the other warriors took a half-step back. No one had ever heard him use that tone with her. "Kalen," she whispered, her eyes wide with shock and fear. "What's wrong with you?" He didn't answer her. He didn't take his eyes off me. He was breathing hard, fighting a battle I could now feel raging within him. The man versus the wolf. Duty versus instinct. "Go back to your room, Elara," he commanded, his voice tight. I fled. I didn't need to be told twice. I ran back up the stairs, my heart threatening to beat its way out of my chest. I didn't stop until I was safely back in my prison, the door bolted behind me. I collapsed against it, shaking. He had protected me. He had stood between me and Serafina, and his wolf had snarled a claim. The logical part of his brain, the alpha who had made the deal with me, might be in control, but the primal beast inside him was beginning to break its chains. Later that night, the storm inside him subsided, replaced by a deep, troubled confusion. I felt it as I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. The bond was changing. It was no longer just a hollow ache. It was becoming a bridge. He had felt my fear when Serafina had approached, and his wolf had reacted without his permission. And I had felt his wolf's possessiveness, its claim. It was terrifying and exhilarating all at once. This careful, sterile arrangement he had constructed was not going to work. The bond wouldn't allow it. It was a living thing, and it was growing stronger every day, pushing us together, demanding to be recognized. Kalen could fight it, but for how long? And what would happen when his control finally snapped? The thought sent a shiver of fear and a wholly inappropriate thrill down my spine. The cage was beginning to rattle, and I didn't know if I wanted to be free of it or trapped inside when the beast finally broke loose. The incident at the training grounds shifted something fundamental between us. Kalen's avoidance became a tense, crackling awareness. He started creating reasons to be in the Alpha's wing when I might be about. I would open my door to retrieve my meal tray and find him at the far end of the hall, ostensibly examining a tapestry. He wouldn't look at me, but I would feel the force of his attention, a palpable pressure against my skin. The bond would hum between us, a taut wire of unspoken words and suppressed emotions. His inner turmoil was a constant companion. I felt his wolf's growing impatience, its frustration with his human rationale. It wanted its mate. It wanted to scent me, to touch me, to claim me. And the more he denied it, the more agitated it became. This agitation started to spill over into his leadership. I'd feel sharp spikes of his anger during council meetings, a simmering impatience that was unlike his usual calm command. The elders were noticing. Whispers started again. The alpha was not himself. One afternoon, a sharp, stabbing pain lanced through my temple, originating not from me, but from him. It was so intense I dropped the book I was reading. It was a headache born of extreme stress and lack of sleep. He was running himself into the ground, trying to manage the pack, the impending rogue threat, Seraphina's increasingly demanding presence, and the constant war within himself. On impulse, I did something bold. I remembered my mother, a healer in our old pack before she died, talking about a specific combination of herbs for tension headaches: willow bark, chamomile, and lavender. The pack house apothecary was off limits, but the herbs grew wild in the alpha's private garden. Under the cloak of dusk, I slipped out of my room and made my way to the garden. It was a beautiful, secluded place, and for a moment I just breathed in the scent of night-blooming jasmine and damp earth. I quickly found the herbs I needed, my fingers moving with an instinct I didn't know I possessed. I crushed the leaves and flowers, bundling them in a small piece of cloth I'd torn from my old uniform. Getting it to him was the problem. I couldn't just walk up to his study and hand it to him. Instead, I waited until I knew he was in a late-night meeting. I crept to his study, my heart in my throat, and slipped the small herbal pouch under his door. I didn't leave a note. He would know. I rushed back to my room, my cheeks burning with the audacity of my actions. I waited, my senses stretched, listening through the bond. A long while later, I felt him return to the study. I felt his surprise as he found the pouch, the way he lifted it, his confusion. Then he inhaled the scent of the herbs. A wave of something warm and unfamiliar washed over me through the bond. A feeling so complex it took me a moment to identify it. It was gratitude mingled with a deep, aching tenderness. The pain in his head began to recede. He knew it was for me. It was an intimacy, a quiet act of caring that was more dangerous than any argument. We had crossed a line. The next day, there was a knock on my door. Not the soft rap of a servant, but a firm, solid knock. My breath hitched. It was him. I opened the door a crack. Kalen stood there, looking tired but clearer than he had in weeks. He held the small herbal pouch in his hand. "How did you know?" he asked, his voice low and rough. "I felt it," I admitted, my gaze fixed on the floor. He was silent for a long moment. "My mother used to make these for my father." I looked up, surprised. His eyes were not cold, not angry. They were filled with a raw, painful vulnerability. He was looking at me, really looking at me, and I felt stripped bare. "You have a healer's touch," he said softly. "My mother was a healer," I whispered. He nodded slowly, as if something had just clicked into place for him. Before either of us could say more, Seraphina's voice trilled down the hallway. "Kalen, are you in there?" Panic flared in his eyes. He shoved the pouch back into my hand, his fingers brushing against mine. The contact was electric. A jolt of pure energy shot up my arm, and the bond flared so brightly it was almost painful. He gasped, snatching his hand back as if burned. "Stay here," he ordered, his voice once again tight with command, and pulled the door shut just as Seraphina rounded the corner. I leaned against the door, my body trembling. That touch. It was a taste of what the bond could be, a connection so profound it defied words. And it terrified him. The incident with the herbs marked the beginning of the end of his control. His wolf, having been given a taste of its mate's care, was no longer content to be caged. Its demands grew more insistent, its temper more frayed. The breaking point came during the annual full moon hunt. It was a sacred tradition, a pack-wide event. I was expected to stay hidden, of course. I watched from my balcony as the pack gathered on the lawn below, their forms shifting under the rising moon, their human shapes melting away into powerful lupine bodies. The air crackled with wild energy. Kalen stood apart from the others, his transformation always a sight to behold. He was larger than the others, his fur the color of midnight, his eyes a piercing gold. He was the alpha, magnificent and deadly. He threw his head back and let out a howl that was both a call to the hunt and a cry of deep, primal loneliness. The sound resonated in my very bones, a lament for the mate who could not run at his side. Seraphina, in her sleek gray wolf form, trotted to his side, nudging him playfully. Kalen's wolf, the true Kalen in that moment, snarled and snapped at her, a vicious, unequivocal warning. She leaped back, whining in surprise and fear. The entire pack stilled, their wolfish eyes watching the confrontation. From my balcony, I felt the reason for his fury. It wasn't just Seraphina's presence. A rival pack, the Bloodfangs, had been encroaching on our territory for weeks. Kalen's scouts had reported them near the southern ridge. He was on edge, his protective instincts on a knife's edge. And his wolf, untempered by his human reason, blamed Seraphina's weakness, her unsuitability as a Luna, for the pack's vulnerability. Suddenly, a scent drifted on the wind, a scent that made every wolf on the lawn, including the alpha, freeze. Rogues. Not just the Bloodfangs, but unaligned, desperate rogues, drawn by the scent of a pack in turmoil, and they were close. An attack during a sacred hunt was a grave insult, a declaration of war. Kalen's wolf let out a ferocious roar. The pack answered, a chorus of battle cries. And then they were gone, a wave of dark fur melting into the trees. The pack house was suddenly, eerily quiet, but the bond was screaming. It was a chaotic symphony of rage, adrenaline, and a desperate, clawing fear that was not for himself, but for his pack. The fighting had begun. I paced my room like a caged animal, helpless. I could feel every blow he took as a phantom pain on my own skin, every surge of his fury as a fire in my blood. Then I felt something else, a sharp, searing pain in his side, followed by a wave of dizziness and the metallic taste of blood. He was injured, badly. A cold dread washed over me. The pack healers were good, but an alpha's wound, tainted by a rogue's desperate bite, could be treacherous. It could fester, poison the body and the spirit. I couldn't stay here. I couldn't hide while he was out there, bleeding, fighting for us. I didn't know what I was doing, what I hoped to accomplish. I was no warrior, but I was a healer's daughter, and I was his mate. I ran from my room, ignoring the shocked faces of the few guards left behind. I flew down the stairs and out into the night, following the pull of the bond, the bloody scent on the wind, and the sounds of the raging battle. I ran toward the fight, toward my alpha, my heart a frantic drum against my ribs. The maid was done hiding. The Luna, whether he wanted her or not, was coming. The forest was a nightmare of shadows and violence. The air was thick with the scent of blood and wet fur, the sounds of snarling wolves, and the sickening crunch of bone. I was small and human, a fragile thing in a world of tooth and claw, but the bond was a beacon, pulling me forward through the chaos. I felt Kalen's pain as a homing signal, a desperate call my soul could not ignore. I found him near a rocky outcrop, backed against a cliff face. His magnificent black wolf form was matted with blood, a deep, ragged gash in his side weeping black, sluggish poison. The rogue's venom. He was holding off 3 large rogues, their fur mangy, their eyes glowing with a rabid light. His movements were slowing, the poison sapping his legendary strength. He was dying. The pack was scattered, fighting their own battles, too far to help. "Kalen!" I screamed, the name torn from my throat. His golden wolf eyes widened as they found me. A fresh wave of fury and terror, for me, for my safety, surged through the bond. He roared, a sound of pure denial, trying to drive me away. But the rogues had seen me too. Their attention shifted. A weak, human female. Easy prey. One of them broke off from Kalen and charged at me. Time seemed to slow down. I saw its yellowed fangs, the saliva dripping from its jaws. I was going to die. But as it leapt, a strange calm fell over me. An instinct I didn't know I possessed took over. My mother's voice whispered in my memory, not about herbs, but about a different kind of healing, a power that ran in our bloodline, a secret she had never had time to explain. The heart of the pack is the Luna. Her strength is its shield. I didn't run. I stood my ground, raised my hands, and closed my eyes, focusing all my will, all my love for the man bleeding behind me, all my desperation into a single point in my chest. I felt the bond, that silver thread to Kalen, and I pulled. I pulled on his strength, his spirit, his very essence. A light erupted from me, not the gentle silver of the moon, but a warm, brilliant gold. It exploded outwards in a wave, slamming into the charging rogue and sending it flying. The other 2 rogues who had been closing in on Kalen stumbled back, whining and shielding their eyes from the blinding radiance. The golden light didn't fade. It swirled around me, coalescing, pouring from my hands, my heart. It was pure life force, pure healing energy. It was the power of a true Luna, a power that had lain dormant in my blood for generations, waiting for the right bond, the right moment to awaken. Stunned silence fell over the small clearing. Kalen stared at me, no longer with the eyes of a wolf, but with the dawning, awestruck comprehension of a man. He saw me not as the maid, not as a problem, but as his salvation. The rogues, recovering from their shock, snarled. They were desperate, not easily frightened. They charged again, this time together. But Kalen was moving too, fueled by a surge of adrenaline and a fierce primal pride that I felt through our bond. He launched himself forward, intercepting one of the rogues. At the same time, I focused the golden light not as a wave, but as a spear, and hurled it at the other. It struck the rogue in the chest, and the wolf dissolved into a cloud of black dust and panicked whispers. Kalen finished the last one with a brutal efficiency, his fangs finding its throat. Then he turned to me, his great wolf form swaying. The poison was still in him. The adrenaline was fading. He collapsed onto the forest floor, his breathing ragged. I rushed to his side, the golden light still clinging to my hands. I knelt beside him, ignoring the blood and the sheer intimidating size of him. I placed my hands on the venomous wound in his side. "It's okay," I whispered, tears streaming down my face. "I'm here. I've got you." The light flowed from my palms into his body. It was warm, soothing. I could feel the poison resisting, a cold, dark thing. But my power was stronger. It was the power of the bond, of the goddess's choice, made manifest. I poured everything I was into him, pushing the darkness out, mending the torn flesh, cleansing the tainted blood. The blackness of the wound receded, replaced by healthy pink tissue. The fur began to knit itself back together. His ragged breathing eased. He laid his great head in my lap, his golden eyes fixed on my face, full of a wonder and reverence that shattered my heart and rebuilt it anew. He licked my hand, a rough, warm gesture of gratitude, of acceptance, of submission, the Alpha bowing to his Luna. The rest of the pack, having finished their own fights, began to converge on our location, drawn by the fading golden light. They stopped at the edge of the clearing, their wolfish forms frozen in shock at the scene before them. Their Alpha, wounded but healing, resting his head in the lap of the scullery maid, who glowed with an ancient, sacred power. Beta Marcus was the first to move. He slowly approached, shifted back into his human form, and knelt. "Luna," he said, his voice thick with awe. One by one, the other wolves followed suit, shifting, kneeling, bowing their heads in deference. They had seen. They understood. The goddess had not made a mistake. Then I saw her. Seraphina, in her gray wolf form, stood at the back. Her eyes were not filled with awe, but with a burning, murderous hatred. In that moment, I felt a flicker through the bond from Kalen, a memory, a flash of understanding. Seraphina's family had been secretly negotiating with the Bloodfangs, hedging their bets. This rogue attack wasn't random. It was an assassination attempt, orchestrated so she could seize power. My gaze met hers across the clearing. The gentle maid was gone. The timid orphan was gone. I was the Luna of the Blackwood Pack, and she had tried to murder my mate. The golden light around my hands flared once more, no longer warm and healing, but white-hot with righteous fury. Seraphina saw it, and for the first time in her life, she knew true fear. She turned and fled into the darkness of the forest. No one tried to stop her. Her treachery was revealed. Her place here was gone forever. Kalen stirred in my lap, gathering his strength. He slowly pushed himself up, and, before the eyes of his entire pack, he shifted. He stood before me, naked, powerful, and utterly vulnerable. The wound on his side was gone, leaving only a faint pink scar. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. He reached out and cupped my face, his calloused thumb gently wiping away my tears. His eyes held everything I had ever dreamed of: love, respect, and a profound, soul-deep apology. Then he knelt before me, the true Alpha, on his knees before the maid. "My mate," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "My Luna." He leaned in and pressed his forehead against mine. The bond, no longer fractured, no longer a source of pain, flared between us, a complete and perfect circuit of golden light, sealing our souls together under the watchful eye of the moon. He had not just accepted the bond, he had claimed it. He had claimed me. And in the ashes of battle and betrayal, surrounded by our kneeling pack, our new life had finally, truly begun. The days that followed were a whirlwind of change. The pack house, once a place of torment and invisibility for me, became a home. The pack members who had once mocked or ignored me now bowed their heads in respect, their eyes filled with awe. They called me Luna, and the word, which once seemed like a fantastical dream, slowly began to feel real. Kalen never left my side. He was an attentive, almost reverent partner. He had spent weeks fighting the bond, and now that he had surrendered to it, he embraced it with the full, formidable passion of his alpha nature. There was a quiet intensity to his every action. He would watch me from across the dining hall, a soft, private smile on his face. He would reach for my hand as we walked the corridors, his touch both a comfort and a spark that set my skin on fire. We were learning each other, not just through the emotional torrent of the bond, but through small, everyday moments. I learned that he took his tea with honey, that he had a slight scar above his left eyebrow from a childhood fall, that his stern alpha demeanor hid a dry, surprising sense of humor. He learned that I was not the fragile, timid creature he had allowed himself to believe. The power that had awakened in me was now a part of me, a gentle, golden warmth that resided in my chest. With the help of the pack's eldest healer, I began to explore it. It was more than just healing physical wounds, it was a connection to the life force of the pack itself. I could soothe a distressed pup with a touch, encourage the herbs in the greenhouse to grow stronger, and I could feel the emotional state of the pack as a whole, a tapestry of joy, sorrow, and contentment. My relationship with Kalen deepened into something more profound than I could have ever imagined. One night, he led me to his study, the room where he had first laid out the cold terms of our imprisonment. He had me sit in his large leather chair while he built a fire. "I was a fool, Ilara," he said, turning to face me, the firelight dancing in his eyes. "I was so blinded by duty, by politics, by what I thought was best for the pack, that I couldn't see what was right in front of me. The goddess gave me the greatest gift imaginable, and I tried to lock it in a cage." "You were protecting your pack," I said softly. "It's what an alpha does." "An alpha protects his Luna," he countered, his voice raw with regret. "And I failed you. For years, you lived in my house, and I never saw you. I let them hurt you. That is a stain on my honor that I will spend the rest of my life trying to erase." He crossed the room and knelt before me again, taking my hands in his. "I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I'm going to earn it. I swear it." Tears welled in my eyes. "There is nothing to forgive, Kalen. We found our way." He lifted my hand to his lips and kissed my knuckles. "The pack needs more than an alpha. It needs you." Our mating ceremony was held a week later, under the same full moon that had first chosen me. The entire pack was there, not with scorn or disbelief, but with joyous celebration. I wore a simple gown of moonlight silver, and Kalen stood beside me, his eyes never leaving my face. When we spoke the ancient vows and he marked my neck, the bond solidified into an unbreakable, ecstatic reality. It was not the agonizing flare of our first connection, but a deep, resonant hum of perfect completion. We were one. Serafina was never seen again. Rumor had it that she and her family, disgraced by their treachery, had fled to the lawless lands far to the north. The alliance was broken, but we didn't need it. News of the Luna with the golden light, the Alpha's true mate, who had single-handedly repelled a rogue attack, spread through the territories. It was a power far greater than any army. No one dared challenge the Blackwood pack now. Our new normal was quiet, peaceful, and filled with a simple, profound joy. My favorite moments were the nights we would spend on that small stone balcony of my old room, my prison that had become a sanctuary. We would stand there, wrapped in each other's arms, looking out at the forest and the moon. On one such night, Kalen held me close from behind, his chin resting on my head. "Do you ever miss it?" he murmured into my hair. "The silence, the anonymity?" I thought for a moment, remembering the girl who scurried through the halls, desperate to be invisible. "That girl was lonely," I said softly. "She thought silence was safety. She was wrong." I turned in his arms to face him, placing my hand over his heart. "This is safety. This is home." He smiled, a true, unguarded smile that still made my heart skip a beat. He leaned down and kissed me, a slow, tender kiss that spoke of promises kept and a future filled with love. The moon cast its silver light down on us, not as a spotlight of judgment, but as a gentle blessing. The mockery was a distant echo, a ghost of a life that no longer belonged to me. I was not the maid they had scorned. I was the Luna, the heart of the pack, and the beloved mate of the true Alpha. And as I looked into his eyes, I knew the goddess hadn't made a mistake. She had simply been writing the first line of the greatest love story our pack would ever know.